Hello, Assalamu alaikum everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound, and healthy. And let's talk about a few things. I think these things are again something that we really need to discuss because no matter how much we try to gloss over it or try to ignore it, but this is something that exists. And it is something that more and more people will now obviously, it's something I've wondered about for a very long time. And I've now finally seen that, yes, a few people have started talking about it. So it's time to address this issue as well. Number one, this is something I mentioned on the social media as well. This is this new thing that now everybody is always saying about India because India says that it's one of the oldest cultures and it is this, blah, 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 and oldest religion. First of all, not the oldest religion. Again, if you look at history, the oldest religion was a monotheistic religion. It was Islam, and God has mentioned that like 1,000 times in every single book. And He has said it that the world began with Islam and it will end with Islam. In other words, the religion was always Islam. You can later on call it by many names, but because it began with the name Islam, it's going to end as the name of Islam. So that is number one. And number two, in answer to that, many people have now come up with this thing where they tell them that actually, Indians, they do not even know this, but they are the ummah of Hazrat Adam, right? The first prophet of Islam. Now, this too actually to me doesn't make sense because if you look at history, yes, it is surmised that Adam, the first man on earth, when he landed in what is now India. And that so, but again, if you move on to the story, he landed in India and then he moved. Okay, he moved. If you look at history, the actual recorded history, you would know that Hazrat Adam, or Adam, the first man on earth, he and Eve, Hazrat Hawa, they were both separated. They both landed in different places. So Adam had to move and he had to search for her and find her. And he began his prophethood in Mecca. In fact, most of the prophets, although I know God has said that He has sent prophets to many nations. In fact, He said He has sent the prophets to all the nations in the world. Yeah, I get that. But first of all, Adam was the first man on earth. So what nation? You see, that's what I'm trying to say. What nation? Hazrat Adam lived about, I don't know how many, 1,000 years or more at least. And during his lifetime, all the other prominent prophets that we know of, like Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Ibrahim's sons, they, Ishaq and Ismail and all, they were during the life, and even the one Hazrat Noah, they were all during Hazrat Adam's lifetime, as in he was still alive, because in those days obviously lifespan was huge. They lived like how people now think about immortality. Well, at that time that was basically their life. They lived for thousands of years, like jinns. The jinns, they still live for 1,000 years, by the way. They still have, for some reason, they still have that lifespan. But humans' lifespan, basically, humans' height and lifespan, they both decreased with time. Just like how, as you've seen animals, prehistoric animals, prehistoric trees and plants, they were huge. Well, that's how it was. Men and plants and vegetation, the environment, they all matched each other. You understand? They all matched each other in height, and basically they all began to shrink. The animals, the plants, the people, everybody shrank. Okay? That's part of your evolution, I guess. But we all basically shrank. We shrank in height and we shrank in lifespan. So every generation is shorter than the last in a way. I mean, and every generation has a shorter lifespan. Okay? Or should I say every civilization? Let's not say generation. Let's say every civilization. Yeah, no, not generations. Every civilization is a shorter, has a shorter lifespan and is shorter in height. Okay? Let's put it this way. So, Hazrat Adam was the first man on earth. He may have landed in India, but then there was nobody. You understand? He was the first man on earth. He still had to go and meet his wife on earth, and they still had to produce children on earth. So, just because he landed in a place that is now India, that does not mean that the Indians are automatically his people, because there was nobody. There were no people, there were no nations. He was the first man on earth. I don't know why that is so. I know, but I am going by logic. I know that those people who are trying to claim that the Indians that they don't even know it, but their ancestors were basically the nation of Hazrat Adam, right? But I do not agree, because, as I said, when Hazrat Adam was made a prophet, his prophethood began in Makkah. And as I said, almost all the prominent prophets, if you notice, they all began their prophethood around the Arabian Peninsula. Even those that were in Egypt, they moved to the Arabian Peninsula. They became prophets. Then they moved again. Have you noticed this? I mean, just can you see the pattern here? Everybody, all the major prophets, right? They basically were made prophets around the whole Arabian belt, or should we say around the Middle Eastern belt, okay? Majorly Palestine and Saudi, and then Egypt, okay? So all these prophets, they may have wandered around in different countries, or they may have been born in different countries. Yes, it's true. Or they may have landed in different countries, but they all somehow or the other became prophets after they moved to Palestine or Saudi Arabia. And then some of them moved back as prophets, like Hazrat Musa, or there you are. But you see what I'm saying here? They were all majorly congregated around Palestine and Saudi Arabia as prophets. And similarly, as I said, Hazrat Adam, he was made a prophet. He was given his prophethood when he was in Makkah. So his nation, who is his nation? Where did he produce his kids? Where did his kids scatter around? So yeah, his nation, you would say, would be the Middle East, not India. I'm sorry, but I don't care how you try to prove that. Just because the first man on earth landed in the subcontinent doesn't make the subcontinent his nation. Nation means people. There was nobody on earth then. He hadn't even had children yet. If anything, if the Indians claim that they are the oldest religion, is true, then I would say that if anything, they're probably the first of the rebels. Which again, they're not, because we know that the first of the rebels were again from Hazrat Noah, Noah's time, where the flood came and everybody was, in fact, no, not even Noah's time. It was, I think, the civilization before then. I'm a bit hazy at the moment. But I mean, the point is that the first civilization that went against monotheism were tricked, right? They were tricked by the devil, and the devil's followers were essentially jinns. And they were tricked into, first of all, making, statues of their dead grandfathers or fathers who were supposed to have been known as the wise or pious men or the righteous men of their time. So to commemorate them, the devil, they came and they sort of, tricked them into saying, oh, at least commemorate them, make statues so that people can remember them, that this is how they lived, and people should remember that this is how you should live. And so they did that. And then when they died, and then their children in turn came about, and then then they were told that, oh, you know what, your parents actually worshipped them, you're supposed to. And this is how the whole thing, which you see the Buddhists and the Hindus, where they almost, they basically worship their dead, their dead ancestors, and they have these rituals, and then they give them food, and then they, light up incense sticks and this and that, and then they ask them, oh, look out for us over from there. I mean, that is essentially, it comes from there. Okay, so if the Indians want to claim credit that they were the first people to have been tricked by the devil to go towards this, to go towards paganism, then okay, fine, I don't mind. Go ahead. Because yeah, if you really have proof that you are the nation of those who were the first to become polytheists and to become pagans, then yeah, you are the first, you are the nation that rebelled. So no, so I'm sorry, but Adam was in no way the prophet of India. He didn't have prophethood when he landed in India. And guess what? You need to have a nation in order to be a prophet. And that is why he was made a prophet much later in life. Remember, he lived for over 1,000 years for a reason, because it takes that much time for a nation to be built. And this is how his grandsons and great grandsons and great 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 grandsons became prophets, and this is how they spread. Okay, they're all the lineage of Adam. And notice that they all became prophets again in the Middle East. Now the other of the 127,000 prophets that we have, out of them, as I said, we only know of these few that were mentioned because maybe of their completely direct lineage to Adam, so that we can trace them. But the other prophets around, who again obviously belong to the same lineage, but those prophets, yes, belonged to all the different nations, but somehow or the other they're not yet mentioned, right? But they came to those nations. One of those prophets may have come to India when India became a nation, but it's definitely not Adam. I'm sorry. Because nowhere in history do we trace Adam going back to India. You see what I'm saying? From India, he moved to look for his wife, and then he moved to Makkah, where he was made prophet later on. But there is no instance of him coming back to the subcontinent. So you cannot say that the Indians do not even have any idea, but they actually are the nation of Adam. They're not. It's Makkah. Yeah, like it or not, it is Saudi. Okay, if you ever want to pinpoint a nation, it's the Middle East. And as I said, that's why all the prominent prophets, they moved from Egypt and Syria, and they went to Palestine, and then they gained their prophethood, and then they again moved. So, notice that. Notice where they moved and then where they preached as prophets, and that is their nation. Okay, but they all majorly began their prophethood in Palestine and in Saudi. There's no dispute there. And obviously in what is known as Iraq. Okay, but again, they moved. Notice, they moved. So, yeah. You cannot, this claim has no basis, is what I'm saying. And then we move on to the next claim, or next, which is not at all, it's not related, but at the same time it is related in the sense that it is to do with Muslims. And now these are, the fact that, as we know, the Prophet had said that a time would come when a huge, huge wave of people would turn to Islam. And we are at that time, obviously. These are one of the signs of the Day of Judgment, right? But that doesn't mean the Day of Judgment is very close. No, a lot yet has to happen. We have to have the war, which America is itching to have. That war will destroy America and the Western world, which we know. And then we will again rebuild. And then again, there will be another war. So, and this war in itself that will destroy the West also, this is a pretty long process. It's not an overnight thing. As you can see, it's a long process. So a lot has to happen yet. Now, but at this point, we are at that point in time, yes, where a huge majority of people, they are converting to Islam. They like to use the word revert, but okay. But anyway, I will continue to say convert. So they've converted to Islam, right? and they're all very happy, mashallah, and everything. And you know what? As Muslims, we believe that a true Muslim is a convert. And I'll tell you why. It's because we are nominal Muslims. We just happen to have been born in Muslim families. We're not Muslims by any merit of our own, if you know what I mean. It's not like we studied the religion and that we, decided that, oh yes, Islam is for us. No, we were born into it. You understand? So it's not like we basically, it's not like we did anything. We didn't do anything. You understand? We didn't earn this merit of being a Muslim. Okay? We were just lucky that we were born into it. It had nothing to do with us, is what I'm saying. And so majority of us Muslims, because we are born into Muslim families, we are so casual about it, and we are so we've taken everything for granted. And our parents, because they again they have mixed culture with religion, which is one of my biggest peeves again. They have been mixing culture with religion for so long that we seem to think that, okay, fine, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter until it matters. It matters when your culture clashes with your religion, but you give precedence to your culture, which is again something I've talked a million times about. So yes, it matters. And now the converts, at least some of them, have begun to realize that okay, because yes, to me this is a hypocrisy, and we need to point that out. It is a hypocrisy that, for example, all the scholars and all the Muslim scholars who are helping the converts to convert to Islam and everything, they tell you of all your divine rights. They tell you of what Islam has, what the true Islam is. Obviously they're obliged to. They will tell you every single thing, and then you will study it. You will study the Quran, you will study all the compilations of all the Prophet's sayings and traditions and everything, and then you will find out that, you get this aha moment that, oh my God, it's true. In Islam, we have so many rights. In Islam, it's so open. In Islam, its knowledge is key. In Islam, it's the complete opposite of our own, for example, what Christianity has become or what Judaism has become, So, to them, then Islam becomes this revelation, which it is. And then, when they start exercising, especially, many of those rights, they will find many Muslims who have a problem with them exercising those rights, and they're like, okay, so, and it's true, because you see, the problem is we Muslims who are born Muslims, we are not allowed to exercise our divine rights. This is why to us a convert is a true Muslim, because he has studied the religion, he knows his religion, he knows the ins and outs of it, he knows everything there is to know, and nobody can now lie to them. We've been lied to our entire lives. That's what I'm trying to say. Our parents have lied to us in the name of culture. Our grandparents, our scholars, everybody. They talk about Islam, and then when you say, okay, if Islam says this, then why do we do this? And then they start creating justifications for it. Because it's culture. But they can't do that now with the converts, can they? They can't, because the converts have actually studied the religion thoroughly. You don't just convert to Islam or any religion without doing your due diligence, because it's a life-changing decision. It's a huge decision to change your religion, and especially to go into a religion that claims to be a lifestyle. Islam, we keep on saying, it's not just a religion, it's a lifestyle. So to change your whole lifestyle, you're not going to do that overnight. Also, many of these people, they have spent years even. Yes, many of them have spent years, decades studying the religion until they declare, okay, I'm finally ready to change. I'm finally ready to accept, this change. I'm finally ready to convert. You understand? So they are the true Muslims in our books. All of us Muslims, we know that, by the way. All of us Muslims, we know that these are the real Muslims amongst us, because they know their religion. They studied it. They consciously became Muslims. They weren't born into it, you see. They consciously decided to become a Muslim. And so they will follow Islam correctly, unlike us. So to us, if you talk to any Muslim and you say, okay, so who in your mind is a true Muslim? Yeah, we will always say a convert. In our eyes, a convert who has studied the religion and consciously made up his mind to become one with that religion, he is a true Muslim. Not us. We're just born into it. We don't even know half the stuff. We can't even be bothered to know half the stuff. You know why? Because we're living the way we're living. Because we're living in Muslim countries, especially those of us who are also now living in predominantly Muslim countries, we just can't be bothered to even think about our religion because we think, oh, we are in a Muslim country, everything is as per religion. You understand? This wave of wanting to know more about your religion so that you can answer those Islamophobes began after 9/11. After America decided to do that false flag operation to sell their Patriot Act and to turn the whole global village into a global surveillance, just for that, when they did the 9/11 charade, that is when the Muslims, both overseas and within the Muslim countries, that's when we got that wake up call. That's when they started waking up and saying, hang on, what the fuck are they doing? What the fuck are they trying to say about our religion? How dare they say? And then they needed to counter. And in order to counter, they needed to understand. And then they started studying. You understand? So, as I said, in Islam, actively preaching your religion is also not, I mean, like how the Christians do with the missionaries and everything. No, it's not there in Islam. Despite the fact that you will hear many people who give this they try to give their proofs and their evidence that no, in Islam preaching is no. In Islam, preaching is a different way. In Islam, the Prophet said, practice what you preach. In other words, stop preaching, first practice, make your life so exemplary that people will come and ask you themselves, and then you preach it to them, then you tell them what it's all about. So active preaching, the way people do the missionary style and all, that is actually not in Islam. Because in Islam, you are not allowed to force people to do anything. You see, you're just not allowed to do that. The only people who could preach were the prophets, and they preached. And now we're told that you have all the materials, you have all the content needed, do your due diligence, okay? And then practice your religion properly, become a good human being, and lead by example. That is the true way to preach in Islam. You're not supposed to preach. So I know there are people who go around and give dawah and all, and they try to prove by different sources that it is in Islam, that there is the concept of dawah in Islam. But actually, no, not really, not really. But I mean, I applaud them that they're trying. Especially if it is basically to create awareness of Islam after all the 9/11 charade and the Islamophobe and everything. I get that, the Islamophobes, I get that. So yeah, you do you. But I'm just telling you that generally in Islam, like how in Christianity, preaching, going to places and preaching and doing the missionary thing and everything, that is not in Islam. Okay, so yeah, when people who are rapidly converting to Islam are also now understanding the fact that there are Muslims who are born Muslims are not real Muslims, I'm sure they're beginning to understand that, because they are now seeing how those Muslims, despite the fact that they have everything in the Quran and in the Hadith and everything, but they still somehow or the other bring their culture in. They mix their culture with their religion, and not always in a good way. And the major things that the converts will face is that when you know that in Islam you're allowed to do something, but you're frowned upon when you do it, because their culture, which is essentially a pagan culture, again, because why? The only reason your culture will contradict or clash with Islam is because it has pagan roots. For example, if Islam says that a woman can divorce a man without any reason, but your culture imposes restrictions upon a woman who's divorcing her husband, then you're going against Islam, and it's a sin, Or if Islam says that a man must, give So, for example, yeah, okay, in Islam, it is said that a man must provide if he has to marry more than once, which most Muslim countries are aware of the fact that actually in Islam, this is a trick, what you call a trick question or a tricky situation, a trap set for men, in which they are told that, okay, you can marry at least four, no more than four wives at a time. And the condition here is that every one of them must have their own home, they must have their own kitchen, you must give them equal time, you must spend equal number of nights with them, you must spend equal number of days with them, you must give them the same kind of gifts, you must give them equal love. And then the prophet at the end says, which you cannot, because you cannot love anybody equally. It's true. It's true. Even parents, as I've said many times, even parents do not love all their children unconditionally. That is a lie and a myth. Parents are human beings. They cannot love all their children equally and unconditionally. So how can a man love more than one woman at the same time equally? No, it's very rare. It's very rare. So, that's the condition there, which is why in most Muslim countries you have seen that their culture is that either they just have one wife and shut up and sit down, or you will see that they are first extremely rich enough to have different independent houses for all their wives. For example, in the African culture, where actually even pre-Islamically, in their culture, even prior to Islam, they have had this culture of having multiple wives. So for them, it was no big deal. So the condition that Islam brought in, that okay, you can have multiple wives, but they must have their own homes, they must have their own cars, for example. In other words, you must provide and facilitate each and every one of them equally. So they were like, okay, so there were all the rich people, especially in Africa, and they're like, yeah, okay, that's not a big deal. And so they all provide for their wives separately, independently, but at the same time they all live as one family. And in other words, the wives, they live in harmony with each other, because what is there to clash about? They all have their own independent houses, they have their own maids, they have their own help, they have their own provisions, they have their own car, they have their own driver, they have everything of their own. It's like, what is there for them to fight with each other about? You understand? So the same is in the Arab culture. The Middle Eastern and the African culture have a lot in common, by the way, as you must have noticed in these little things. So point being that it is not actually encouraged in Islam to have more than one wife. And there's this new thing that people now keep on coming with, especially in Pakistan. There's this recent wave where a few people are coming up and saying that, oh, this is a divine right where you can get married to more than one wife at the same time, so that you don't have to ask permission. No, as I said, in Islam, this is a divine preconditional right. It's not like the other divine rights, which actually have no conditions, but you are very, very quick to stomp on people exercising those rights. By the way, you're very ready to stomp on people exercising those God-given rights that have no conditions whatsoever. You want to restrict them from exercising those rights, but because it is this right in which a man is supposed to be able to get married to multiple wives. So at the end of the day, this is a preconditional right, okay? You can only exercise this right if you fulfill the conditions. And in Islam, you have to ask the permission of the wife, because if it is your right to take another wife, then it is your wife's right to deny sharing you. In other words, if she refuses to live with you while you have another wife, then she has the right to divorce you. So who the hell came up with this story that, oh, you know what, because it's his divine right, he actually doesn't need permission. He requires permission in Islam, because he first has to know if his wife is okay with it. And if she's not okay with it, she has the right to walk out on him. What does that mean? That means he has to tell her. It means he has to ask her. It means he has to take permission. Yes. And the point is, if you cannot even take care of one wife, what the fuck makes you think that it's okay for you to bring in another wife? When in Islam it is very clearly said that you cannot bring in another wife if you cannot take care of even one. That too is mentioned very clearly. So yeah, that is why we say that, converts are the real Muslims, because they actually study the whole thing before they become Muslims. Whereas you people, you're born Muslims, or us people, we're born Muslims, and then we go around, picking up new stuff from everybody. Somebody says something, somebody says something. You don't even bother to study it. I actually bother to study, by the way. That's why I'm saying you and not us here, because I actually bother to do my due diligence. I actually do my research. I actually pull out the Quran, and I actually pull out all the traditions of the Prophet, and I actually do my research. I don't just sit and listen blindly to scholars or to anybody, because that is haram, by the way. In Islam, it is haram. It is shirk. It's not even haram, it is actually shirk. The Prophet made that very clear as well. This is a hadith that I have been reminding people of again and again, a million times. That the Prophet said that I fear that one day my ummah will commit this shirk of listening blindly to other people, just like the Christians and the Jews. And his companion was so confused, and he's like, but they're just listening to their priests and monks because they have knowledge of the religion, so they're coming to them to get that knowledge. And then the Prophet said, tell me, if something that is your divine right, or something that is allowed by God, is rendered as haram or makruh or impermissible by the monk or the priest, who are they listening to? The monk or the priest, right? And he said, yes, right. And it's like, so they're not listening to God, who said this is allowed. They're listening to the priest who said it's not allowed. So this is shirk. Because now the priest has become God. And this is based on this logic also. I go on to say that when you listen to people who tell you what to do and who try to force you what to do, they're literally playing God. And listening to them blindly would be, although nobody likes to listen to anybody now, thankfully. And again, you see how we're resented that we're not listening to people blindly anymore, and we're always being hounded for this fact. Not just the converted Muslims, I'm talking about all of us generally, our generation, the next generation. We have a huge problem here, which is again a cultural thing. It's not an Islamic thing. It's a pagan culture thing, where we're always forcing people to abide by our standards, our rules, our principles, not by God's standards, God's rules, God's principles. No. And so if we turn around and question them, then we become, we become bad people. We become rebels. We become what is that which we call children? Children who don't listen to their parents. So we suddenly become that. And why? When Islam encourages children to not listen to their parents if they're wrong. Hazrat Umar, his son married the girl who refused to listen to her mother. And he said that this girl, she is a true mother of the nation. She is a woman who can be the mother of the whole nation. Why? Because she refused to listen to her mother when her mother told her to mix water with milk. And she literally argued with her mother. She didn't just refuse. When her mother tried to force her, and when her mother insulted her for not listening to her, she literally argued with her mother, saying, you're wrong, and I'm not going to listen to you. And when Hazrat Umar found that out, he didn't say, oh, how dare you talk to your mother like that? Whatever she is, she gave birth to you. You don't know the pains she had to go through. No. Hazrat Umar literally lauded the girl for being so honest that she went against her mother. She questioned her mother. And he said, whoever will marry this woman would be the luckiest man on earth. And his son came forward and said, I'll marry her. So what does that tell you? Hazrat Umar actually scolded a lot of parents, by the way. And as we know, the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, said, if there were ever to be a prophet after me, if I was not the last prophet, and if there was to be a prophet after me, it would have been Hazrat Umar. And Hazrat Umar, as we can see, as we have proof, the whole modern civilization owes their it's it they the whole modern civilization owes its infrastructure, its vast intelligence networks, its army networks, its governmental networks, its social welfare, financial networks. It owes everything to Hazrat Umar. He is the one that made the world what it is today. The whole Western world, the whole Eastern world, the whole developed world, they are following on Hazrat Umar's footsteps. They are literally following him. And that is why we say that Europe follows the Umayyad system. The Umayyad system is Hazrat Umar's system. Whereas America simplifies it by saying, oh, we follow the Muhammadan system, which is Hazrat Muhammad, peace be upon him. And it's the same because Hazrat Muhammad laid out the foundation, but Hazrat Umar put it out there on a global level. He organized everything. He mapped out everything on a global level. He made the whole freaking empire. You understand? And Hazrat Umar had a whole lot of problems with parents who came around complaining about their kids not listening to them and all. And he always told the parents, look, you began, they reacted. They're not wrong. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Don't think that because you're parents, you can say and do whatever you like to them and they must listen to you. No, they're not obliged to listen to you. They are human beings and they are individuals and they will soon grow up to have their own lives. So, yeah, no. They're not here to blindly listen to you. You're human beings too. You can also commit mistakes and you can also be wrong. Live with it. This was his attitude towards parents. And this is my attitude towards parents. Okay? So I really, really relate to him in so many ways. Because I feel that the man was an amazing man. And the way he just gave that shut up call to people, it was amazing. I mean, there was a reason people feared him, right? He was a very, very strict, very, very upright person who was a no-nonsense man, and he believed in fairness and justice. And I absolutely relate to that, okay? I think that mercy is something that we can abuse, which we have been abusing in today's world. In today's world, the reason why we are so crime-riddled is because we have used mercy as a weapon against our victims. Victim bashing began with the abuse of mercy. When we start forcing victims to forgive those who have caused them harm and hurt, and this is in our culture, it's in our culture hugely. Oh, they're poor, let them go. Oh, they're rich, let them go. Oh, they're old, let them go. Oh, they're young, let them go. Then why the fuck didn't anybody let me go? I was young once too. I'm not rich either. I'm a female to boot. Why am I not given all those privileges that I am obliged to give to the whole motherfucking world? Why? This is the hypocrisy. This is the double standards right here. There's always one person who has to give and give and give while everybody has to just take and take and take. So, yeah. This is why I keep on coming back to this whole parenting issue, is because, as I said, it begins at home. Your whole cultural crisis begins at home. Your whole political crisis begins at home. Your whole religious crisis, it begins at home. The whole hypocrisy, the deceit, the lies, the victimizing, the victim bashing, it all begins at home, where abuse is known as culture, where treating your children as if you own them is culture, and all of these things are crimes and sins in Islam. But we very neatly ignore it in the name of culture, and this is a sin. This is one of those sins that we're committing, which obviously every new convert, when they see people do that, then obviously it pinches them. And when there are a few ignorant jahils who then try to overreach, and then they think that they know everything about Islam when they know jack shit. They've just proven that they know jack shit. And then they go to a convert and say, oh, you shouldn't do this. Why shouldn't they do it? It's their divine right. The reason they came to Islam is because they found out that they can do this. So you're trying to tell them that, oh, it's all in the books. It's just written, it's literally like how we teach our children that, oh, we've taught you about honesty and we've taught you about right and wrong and justice, but it's in the books. Leave it in the books. In real life, you have to do this. In real life, you have to snatch from others. In real life, you have to drag others down to get what's rightfully yours. In real life, you cannot all stand up together and earn benefit together. You have to step on other people's heads. This is real life. And then you ask them, why the fuck did you then teach us this is right and this is wrong? Why the fuck did you drill it into our minds? Oh, but those are just written. They're things. They're just laws in the books. They're only for the books. Seriously. So you're trying to tell us that all this is just in the books. We should ignore the Quran, we should ignore the Hadith. But whenever you want to, then suddenly you produce a verse of the Quran or the Hadith to your advantage. What the fuck is that? That, my friend, is when we say that the devil quotes scriptures to his own advantage. So here you are, the devil's again. So tell me, what about it is right? What about anything that you're doing in your miserable lives is not a sin or a crime, while you're trying to teach others what to do and not to do? You're the ones committing the ultimate crime. Because again, when you're forcing somebody to disregard what God has allowed, then it means you want us to take you as God. Yes, it is exactly that. Don't you dare say it's not that, because it is that, because the Prophet made it very clear that if you're listening to a priest and a monk and he says that you shouldn't do this, even though God said you should do this and you can do this, then you are committing shirk. So you want us to commit shirk by listening to you. That means you want us to accept you as God. In Islam, you are supposed to cut off from toxic families. You are supposed to cut off from parents. In Islam, it is made very clear, and I've quoted all these hadiths many times, that if a child grows up to be a villain or a rebel, or he grows up to commit crimes, the onus of it is all on his parents, because their behavior, their attitude, their abuse, whatever it is, the way they treated him, made him a bad person. So they will be punished for it. But if in spite of all of it, he turns out to be a good person, they will not be given credit for it. It's all on him, because he made it through despite all of that. It's all on him. All the credit goes to him. And at the same time, even if he is a good person, but he refuses to now take care of his parents, and he decides to cut off from them and stay away from them, even at their old age, there is no sin on him. This is Islam, okay? Now you bring your bloody motherfucking culture, and you bring your pagan-ass culture, and you say, oh, whatever it is, and then you say that it is Islam. That's the worst part, is when you quote Islam. You're bringing your culture, but you're quoting Islam, and you're abusing the Islamic verse that has no context whatsoever to this. It is not connected whatsoever to this situation. And you're saying, oh, it is your duty to take care of your old parents. You are told that, and they always quote that one ayat always, that show great kindness to your parents as they went through great pains to have you. Show great kindness to your parents in their old age. But you know what? Hazrat Ali made that very clear. He said, treat your children the way you want to be treated when the tables are turned. When you become old and frail and weak. And how many of you parents again have treated your children nicely, but you're so proud of the fact that despite the fact that you were not good parents, your children are doing their due diligence and they are taking care of you in your old age. You should be ashamed of yourselves and not proud. And again, you are not getting the credit for it. You are not. You will actually be punished for it. That not only did you make your children's lives miserable and you treated them badly and you didn't even provide for them properly, but you do not even allow them to live their own lives. You do not allow them to properly provide for themselves. You restricted them, you controlled them, you did not treat them well. And even now you're controlling them because instead of going there, making their lives, they have to sit here and take care of your freaking ass. And you're saying, oh, you see, we're so proud of our children. And the whole society also comes together and says, oh, yes, they're amazing. That you have brought your children up well. You have not brought your children up well. You're taking advantage. You're taking advantage of them and you're controlling them. So you're actually committing another sin. That not only did you control them and take advantage of them and use and abuse them throughout your youth, but now you're wasting their youth so that they should take care of you. And by the time they're done with you, they will be past middle age. And so you have controlled their old age as well, that even after death, they cannot live their lives properly. You have trapped them, that even after you die, they will still be picking up the pieces that you've left behind. They're still taking care of your properties. They're still and when those of them actually have sense, the sense enough to sell everything and get out, you will hear everybody in the society say, hey, their parents, they spent their whole lives, look, they made their house, everybody lived together. As soon as parents die, everybody just separates, no unity, and then they sell their home. And well, what are they supposed to do? Again, in Islam, that is what they're supposed to do, by the way. In Islam, they're not supposed to sit and revere their homes of their parents as if they're their tombs. You're not worshipping the dead here. They have to move on. They have to live their own lives. They all have their own lives. They have to sell the property and give each other their shares so that they can all live their lives. What, you want them to continue revering their dead parents' properties? Why? So this is a trap, right? So basically, you, the society, have accepted that parents need to trap their children like this forever. Where even after the death of their parents, children should have nowhere to go. They shouldn't have their lives. We literally, we encourage and we embrace victims. We want victims to remain victims, because we like it that way. Literally, we romanticize victims by saying, oh, look at that poor girl, she couldn't even get married, her parents, they did very bad to her, they never provided for her, they didn't even let her have a job, she didn't even have a car, and look, they're dead now, and look at her where she is, she can't even have a life of her own even after they're dead. And that's what you want. But the minute she will say, fuck you all, and she'll leave, she'll sell everything, and she'll finally go and make her life. You see? Did you see how cold-hearted she is? It is true, her parents didn't do anything for her, but at least they provided enough for her. So what if they didn't give her anything? But she had a house to live in. Now they're dead, and she sold the house and gone. Oh my God. Yeah. This is what we are talking about when we say that you bring your pagan-ass culture and you force people to do something that God has already said that you cannot. And when God says that you have no right to control another person's life, even if you're their parents, and if you have controlled them, they have the right to rebel against you. They have the right to cut off from you. They have the right to leave you. And I'm actually taking up this issue a lot because I actually had to answer even a girl who said that I have a very toxic sister and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get away from it. And I told her that I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, you need to leave the house. You need to leave the country. Because the only way to get away from toxic people is to create an impossible distance to cover between you and them. And what I didn't tell her is that the truth is that your toxic sibling is not just toxic on her own. If they're allowed to be toxic, it's your parents behind it. Your parents who are turning a blind eye to the whole situation are equally the culprit. And even if you manage to get away from your toxic sibling, your parents will carry on that toxicity. I know because I've been there. So the only way you can get rid of one toxic family member is getting rid of all your family members. You need to leave and never make the mistake, because these are the mistakes I've made and I've learned from them very painfully. Never make the mistake of empathizing with your parents when they come with the sob story and they try to blackmail you and they give you these false promises that they will never do this again, or they will never do that again, or they will make sure that your life is great and this and that. Never, ever, ever, ever make the mistake of giving your parents another chance to redeem themselves. Because to be honest, if they have never redeemed themselves while you were living with them all these years, why would they redeem themselves now? The only reason they want you back is so that they can once again assert control over you, because you're their property, essentially. I'm sorry, but that's it. That's what I'm trying to tell you, that you need to understand something about Asian parents, especially. They literally think that they own their children, that they have the right to control their children, that their children are their properties, and that their children have duties towards them. You understand? But what they don't understand is they have to fulfill their own duties first towards their children. But they think that just getting it at the basics is more than enough. If getting it at the basics is more than enough, then your child should be allowed to make his life better. And your child is allowed to also give you just the basics. So this, as we know, and we always talk about how relationships are about give and take. But in a parent-child relationship, there's a lot more taking and a lot less giving. So either there's always one child that takes and takes and takes and takes and takes. They take from their parents, they take from their siblings, they take from everybody, and they keep on taking. Those are the toxic ones. They're the black sheep, and they're in every family. And then there's one child who has to pay for that black sheep, because he is the weak one. Because the one who's taking, nobody can fight them. So what will they do? They will turn and lash out on the one who is the weaker one. In their eyes, he's weak. He's not weak, but in their eyes, he's weak because he's not taking from them. He's not asking anything from them. So now they will leech onto him, and they will take and take and take, and then they will abuse him. They will take from him, and then they will abuse him, and then they will lash at him, and they will never give him anything, but they will act as if they have provided for him. This is again your doubles, which is why, again, as I say, most parents do not deserve to be parents, because as parents, the first thing that you need to learn to do is to take care of the child who isn't asking anything from you, and to control the black sheep. But you've just proved that you are cowards, and you've proved that you are stupid, and you are weak. Actually, you've proved that you are weak against a bully, and so you turn to somebody else and you bully them. If you have a problem, again, you see, justice and fairness is that you retaliate against those who are bullying you. But as parents, notice, parents will always bully the other child, and they will never, ever, ever try to control the child. And that is your task. You see, you're talking about, this is your task as parents. If God has given you a duty and a responsibility and a task, it is to control that black sheep. It is to control that potential criminal. It is to fix your shit. That is the shit that you need to fix. But no, you very neatly get away from that. and then you focus on the other child and you deliberately ruin that child's life, you ruin that child's plans, you ruin their studies, you ruin everything. Why? Because you couldn't do it to the one you wanted to. You have failed. You have failed the test. You have failed as parents. You have failed as human beings. And this is why I can very, very assuredly tell you that despite the fact that you were supposed to be given a very higher status as parents, but I think the majority of the people who will land in hell are parents. Because the majority of the parents are the ones who have hurt and controlled and harmed and caused loss to those who are weaker than them, those who depended on them, those who trusted them, while turning a blind eye to the criminals they gave birth to, the bullies, the black sheep, who were the real test. That was the real test. And you failed. So, converts, converted Muslims, you go ahead and follow Islam to the fullest. Do whatever it is that Islam has allowed you to do. And you nominal Muslims who don't even know your ass from your face, go and learn your religion first. And then talk to anybody else about what they should or shouldn't do. This is me signing out, motherfuckers. Bye bye. Khuda Hafiz.